So going back from Iowa to the international arena, radiation fears clear the shelves in Tokyo stores. The crisis in Japan has stoked fears about the safety of Japan's food and water supply. Radiation has been found in raw milk, seawater, and 11 kinds of vegetables, including broccoli, cauliflower, and turnips, grown in areas around the plant. The United States and Australia halted imports of Japanese dairy and produce from the region. Hong Kong said that it would require that Japan perform safety checks on meat, eggs, and seafood. And Canada said it would upgrade controls on imports of Japanese food products. Singapore, too, has banned the sale of milk, produce, meat, and seafood from areas near the plant. Readings showed the city's tap water was back to levels acceptable to infants, but the relief was tempered by elevated levels of the isotope in two neighboring prefectures, Chiba and Saitama. Still on Japan, relating it to the food industry now. This is from the Des Moines Register, Friday, March 25th. Japan is still hungry for U.S. beef and corn. Export numbers show the earthquake and tsunami did not destroy Japanese demand for the United States farm products. This week's U.S. Department of Agriculture export report was crucial because it was the first to cover the week after the earthquake and tsunami that hit Japan, which is the biggest buyer of U.S. corn and third biggest buyer of U.S. beef. So again, that's how events in Japan impact us on a local level. We never want to forget what's happening overseas and its effect on our own food economy, what we eat, what we send out for others to eat, energy, infrastructure, and how that reflects on what we're doing here and maybe what we're not doing here as well. I'm standing in front of City Hall. Down the street is the Iowa State Capitol. This is the Des Moines River. This is the Locust Street Bridge. That's downtown Des Moines. That's the other side of the street. The next article is USDA may alter wording on grain reports. This is now on energy and ethanol. Ethanol industry leaders and governors have balked at estimates that show corn's used for fuel and livestock feed. This is coming from Washington, D.C. The Agriculture Department may tweak the wording in its closely watched monthly reports on grain supplies in response to concerns by ethanol producers who say the numbers unfairly fuel criticism of the industry. Governors of ethanol-producing states complained recently that the department's estimates make the amount of corn fed to livestock look smaller than it actually is. The complaint centers on the estimates of how much corn is used for ethanol production and how much goes into livestock feed. And that's the food versus fuel debate. The concerns reflect the pitched public relations battle that the ethanol industry is waging to quell concerns about the impact of biofuel production on global food prices. Concerns that complicate the industry's efforts to persuade Congress to extend its subsidies. And the next article is back focusing on our local issues. Webster City Jobs Office receives reprieve. So that's the same edition of the Des Moines Register, which was full of energy and industry and food news for that day. A federal grant will keep open another year an unemployment office slated to close in Webster City, where an Electrolux appliance factory will shut down next week and cut 500 workers. But a local leader says that's not enough to help hundreds of unemployed workers trying to get back on their feet. Quote, everybody who's been laid off in the past 6 months, including 500 workers laid off next week, will not be squared away by July 1st, 2010. So there still remains a lot of anxiety about the economy, about our financial wherewithal, and about jobs. There's a lot of stress and anxiety that even while businesses at the higher level have recovered, at the personal level and maybe even at the local level, there's still a lot of progress to be made to increase confidence, employee confidence, and then as a result consumer confidence in our economy. You know, I'm looking at the river from the bridge and I'm thinking to myself, I'm glad that they're sending a request for proposals for bids, because I'm looking at the sidewalk here and it actually does appear to need some attention. I don't know what it looks like underneath. I'm not going to go down there to find out. There's also another issue that came out in the USA Today about the water, radiation found in Tokyo water, and then also thyroid cancer risk by tainted water. So that's the continuing aftermath of the earthquake, where you had the earthquake itself, followed by the tsunami, followed by the nuclear crisis, followed by the radiation crisis. So Japan has definitely taken some hits. Radioactive iodine exceeding the safety standard for infants but not children or adults was found Wednesday in water at a Tokyo purification plant, the Japanese Prime Minister's office said. The level was about twice the safety standard for infants up to 1 year and 2/3 that for adults, the Prime Minister's office said. Parents were advised to give only bottled water to infants. Still in the news, in the wake of radiation from Japan's damaged nuclear power plant after the March 11th earthquake and tsunami led anxious Japanese residents to clear store shelves of bottled water. Radiation from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station has not only seeped into water, but also into raw milk, seawater, and 11 kinds of vegetables. Besides infants, it would be reasonable for pregnant or nursing women to avoid drinking tap water contaminated with radioactive iodine, so their fetuses or infants aren't exposed. Okay, this is the other article about thyroid cancer. Drinking Tokyo's radioactive tap water could lead to a slight increase in thyroid cancer risk over the course of a lifetime, especially in young girls, according to a preliminary assessment by a leading risk analyst. Scientists say the cancer risk is so low that it would likely be impossible to distinguish in future decades between radiation-induced cancers and those unrelated to radiation. Japan has also called a halt to consumption of dairy products and produce from the area around the Fukushima reactors after tests revealed contamination with radioactive iodine and cesium. The U.S. government has restricted dairy and vegetable imports from Japan. Those restrictions also reduce the risk of cancer, according to Hoffman in this article. The risk shrinks even more with every day that passes, because radioactive iodine disintegrates quickly, losing half of its radiation every 8 days, a measure scientists call its half-life. So, alright. So that's energy and health and food and water and public transportation and all sorts of issues wrapped up into one, both on the world stage, on the national stage, and then also on the local stage as it applies to Des Moines.